Awesome. Well, thanks again, everyone, for being here. Ben, I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Let me just get my screen shared. Thank you so much for basically being open, by the way. Can everyone see my slides? Nod for me. Awesome. What's a little different about virtual events is that if you were all in person with each other, you might have actually taken, like what you just heard, maybe something piqued your interest. Like, for example, for Daniel, if you want to touch base after this, like, feel free. I'd love to actually talk about a goal setting workshop. It could be a little bit different, but I would probably approach him and say, hey, I actually teach workshops on goal setting. Let's go over a quick agenda, what that might look like. Let's set up a call. So you would actually engage and follow up. And so if anything piqued your interest from anyone when they were just giving their brief intros, private message them in the chat, or even, better yet, put something in the chat that says, this is what I'm looking for right now. This is what I'd love to connect with. Because one of the main aspects of attending an event is to hopefully also connect with some people. So please take advantage of this platform for that. And I know for sure one of the main kind of values of Deskpass too is community. And so why not make use of it right now? So we are here to talk about getting clear, which then leads to motivation, which then leads to results. A lot of you mentioned the fact that there's a lot of inputs going on right now. Like, the world is evolving and changing. It's like the world is just not settled underneath us. And when there's a ton of inputs, it's really hard to focus on your outputs, like where your energy, your focus is completely outside of yourself. Also, when you don't feel safe, it's very, very hard to think clearly and creatively. So I'd like to, at least for these next 45 minutes or so, to try to say, okay, I'm going to focus on what I'm feeling inside. I'm going to focus how I feel, on what I want, and just forget for a little bit what's going on outside of ourselves, and accept the fact that we're in a really safe space. Because I'm going to ask for you guys to share. I'm going to ask for you guys to engage. So show of nods, because everyone's muted. Do we agree to focus on ourselves right now, what's inside of us, and to accept that we're in a safe space? I see a thumbs up, some nods. Okay. And if you don't agree with that, more than, unmute and tell me you don't agree with that you can't accept that, because this is a dialogue. So I am Dr. Benjamin Ritter. Please call me Ben, though, by the way. And I have a background in organizational leadership, coaching, entrepreneurship, and healthcare. Right now, I'm currently doing two main things. I run LFY Consulting, where I coach and guide entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs to create a career that they love. So that could be starting a business, it could be pivoting industries, it could be navigating your current career, mainly just to feel that your work is meaningful, that you're creating a larger impact. I also work with young leaders through YPO, which is the Young Presidents Organization, and I help them develop learning programs that inspire and help others grow as well. If anyone on this call wants to just have a conversation with me at any time about anything that I'm doing, even something that's not on this bullet point list, so not about podcasts or YouTubes or media or coaching, feel free to just reach out. I'm really active on LinkedIn. Send me a message, we'll set up a short call and we'll just chat. I know I've had a couple conversations with people on this call already, and I'm an open book, so please do. Today, we are going to basically just talk, and that talk is going to be focused on clarity, hopefully with the goals of creating results for ourselves in different areas. I really hope that you will engage, but if you don't feel comfortable engaging, then at least write some stuff down, because I'm going to be giving you some to-dos, some exercises. And my background in organizational leadership really focused on learning, applied learning, experiential learning, how people actually intake information and apply it to their life, how it creates memories and how it creates change. And 70% of information that you intake, if you actually do it at the time of intake, if you actually answer a question about it, or you go talk to someone about it, gets remembered, it gets imprinted. But only around a little under 20% will if you don't. And so I really hope that we are creating transformation. We're not just, maybe giving you a big boost of motivation for the next, couple of days, where you actually are going to do something with the information that comes from today. So please open the notepad on your phone, get a notepad around you, and use if you still have a pencil. I don't know if people still have those. I think I have one of those mechanical ones still. Get a pen, open the Word document on your computer, but we're going to be actually answering some questions today. So for the first question that I'd like everyone to kind of engage with and think about is to share a time that you had clarity in your life. And a lot of times when I ask this question, people go to like the big stuff, the stuff that had a lot of meaning for them. But I mean, even like 2 days ago, clarity for me was, man, I really need a haircut. And at the start of quarantine, that clarity was, how do I get a haircut right now? Like I had no clarity. I had no idea how I was going to do that. So I went on YouTube when the pain was, I was like, man, my hair's a mess. I watched one video on how to cut hair. I spent 2 hours trying to find clippers online because they were all sold out. I eventually found them on Connor's website, and then I had at it. And so now this is like the fourth time I've cut my own hair. I'm getting more and more confident every time, to the point where I'm just like blindly cutting. But that for me was a time that I had clarity on how to go about that and actually do something with that information, with that goal that I had. So would anyone like to share a time that they had clarity? Feel free to just unmute and just start talking. If you don't want to chat, you can put it in the chat box itself.
I think the first thing that came to mind for me was like, gosh, probably 10 years ago, 10 years ago. I had been working in the music industry at a record label. It was like my dream job just out of college. But then like half the company got laid off. And I decided to start a travel blog. And it was sort of around the time that no one was really doing it. And I don't know, I just remember like, maybe it was just because I was super young and had all this like energy and was naive, but I had so much like, I just knew I wanted to travel and I wanted to write and I just wanted to make it happen. And I actually really miss that because sometimes I feel like I'm still confident, but I don't have that super, like I just remember being really, really clear at that time and just like excited to get going and like make that happen, even though I didn't know how to do it.
So I hear that there was some excitement there and there was some confidence that you could do it. Were there any sort of other feelings that went along with having that clarity?
I mean, I think it made me more proactive. I think what was good was that like I can be in my head a lot, and with something like that where I didn't really know what I was doing, I had to actively like ask for help and research and I don't know, just do actionable steps. Even though I kind of didn't necessarily know what all of those were, I kind of had to figure it out. So I think that like being proactive was helpful to just kind of get me moving.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if anyone here is kind of trying to figure out when they might have had clarity, think about times where you felt confident, you felt proactive, you were excited, you were motivated. And I saw a couple other hands pop up. So please, who would like to share next? Yeah, Kyle.
I was going to say for big steps, I had a lot of confidence, a lot of clarity before I had kids. Everything seemed so much simpler, not having to figure out how to manage my time or my interest around my kids. Now, I love them and they've enriched my life, but there are wrinkles that, I have to work around. So any kind of career I've got two who are working right now. One, my oldest drives her own car. My middle daughter, though, she doesn't. So she needs to be taken to work. So I have to kind of like, not only create a schedule that works for me, but create a schedule that works for the kids too. So that's a difficult thing. But on smaller things, I'm really clear about my writing. I'm clear about artwork. I'm clear about poetry that at least before, when I was able to go and do open mics and stuff. I mean, I was really, in my element and I enjoyed it, but the pandemic stopped that too. So it's like difficult.
Mm-hmm. So I hear, at least from the areas that have seemed to have caused a little lack of clarity, right? They're more inputs again, more responsibilities, less time for yourself, which then seems to like when you have time for yourself, I see you connected to your passions, the things that you care about, the creative sides and those different aspects of yourself. I'd be curious to see if there's a way to integrate the things that that work for you with the areas of your life that maybe have seemingly caused less clarity. And we'll get into things that might represent a lack of clarity, but I appreciate you sharing both of those. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share? One more?
I can share because I think it's sort of interesting with what you just said, Carla. I have two kids, And I had a moment of clarity when I had my first kid of like priorities. Like I tend to feel overwhelmed by work, and I had like a really important moment in my life where it was like, I don't need all these, like the thing that I have, what I need, it's right here. And like being present at during those times seemed really important. And it was like, made me really mindful of this, like, I have kind of what I need right here. And this seems like, to me, like a higher purpose. Like it just seems more important than a lot of the bullshit that I was worried about and thinking about. And when I get freaked out, I think about that stuff, and it calms me because it reminds me of like priorities, I guess. But I don't have kids that are 18 or 13, or I mean, I don't even want to think about that yet.
Well, that sounds like a shift of priorities where you maybe were attached to something, you thought you had clarity in an area of your life, especially as it sounds like what means, what is success to you, right? Where should your time be focused on? And then it almost sounds like you had a perspective shift.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I bet it can be a struggle though with kids. I don't have any kids other than a cat, which is nowhere close. But you might see during this presentation, she likes to come up and run on my bookshelf when I'm speaking in workshops. But it's almost like you need to constantly remind yourself what you've decided to prioritize in your life and the reasons behind that prioritization.
It's interesting to have somewhat of like a symbol of it, it's easier to remember, to your point. Like it's just easier to remember because I feel like I have a reminder, a constant reminder in front of me.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing just a little bit. I just wanted to highlight what it feels like to have clarity and what are some different feelings that are attributed to that. Because when we have an awareness of what something feels like, or maybe what the opposite feels like, then we're more apt to be able to create that for ourselves, or more aware of when we might need more of it. I know personally for myself, I have to step back at least once a month and say, where am I going? Like I need to work on clarity for myself constantly. But when you build a lifestyle that relates to what your priorities are and what you want to have clarity around, it makes itself a lot easier, and we'll get into that. So we're here to gain clarity. So I'd love for everyone to share, where do you feel you need greater clarity? Like we're here for a reason. Let's pick something. Let's pick a reason. Let's set a direction right now. Think of a specific example, because we're going to work with this example for the rest of the workshop. Does anyone want to share what they want to focus on today? For me personally, I'm going to be focusing on like my greater career goals and my vision. Like I know what I care about, but I want to actually get a little bit more clear on what those endpoints might look like for myself 10 years from now. So I think everyone is probably here because something's going on in their life where they feel like they lack clarity. And I'll just give a few more seconds for everyone to potentially share what they want to focus on today, but it may be personal. I understand that.
Yeah, I transitioned my business to focus more on like, I've just broadly put it social environmental impact, or people making that. But I feel like every time I try to like specialize my business towards someone or position it, then I always feel like it becomes broader again, and then I gotta like position it even more specifically every time. So I feel like now I need to pick, like, do I want to focus on environmental things? And then maybe I want to focus on rainforest. I don't know. It just keeps getting more queued up for times like this. So I feel like I need clarity, I guess, around that.
Okay. So set that as your target. I want to check in at the end of the workshop, and please share what you've discovered and what you think about. I know as a business owner, I can reflect on the past 10 years and I can tell you that my messaging and my niche and my focus evolves almost with like every couple sales. I don't know. We have a couple of different entrepreneurs on the call right now. I assume they probably could relate in terms of the evolution of what they're focused on and how they've grown from that as they have new experiences. A couple of people shared what it felt like when they had clarity. So just keep in mind, when you have clarity, you're going to feel a certain way inside. You're going to feel a little bit more motivated. You're going to be more proactive. You're going to, on the opposite end, be less anxious, less stressed. You're going to have greater confidence. You're going to be more flexible. You're going to be more adaptable. When you have clarity in your life, when you experience a setback, like for example, people, a lot of people lost their jobs right now. Or maybe you had a plan for your business. And when you have clarity, it's larger than just the to-do. It's larger than just that single aspect with that point in time. It's a broader vision. And so you're more able to adapt, to stay in alignment with that vision that you had for yourself, independent of what actually occurs in your life. So keep that in mind when we're moving forwards now in the workshop. I see in the chat, need to find a new career path. Okay. By the way, I also have a workshop tomorrow on career clarity. Feel free to connect with me and we'll talk about it. Okay, so right now, hopefully everyone has something in their mind where they feel they need greater clarity and they just want to focus on that for today. So write that down somewhere, make a little note of it, a little mental note if you need to, but this is what we're going to focus on. Because when it comes to clarity, there are really like two main things that we need to actually dive into. It's the meaning behind what we actually think we need clarity on, and then the process behind that meaning, how we actually can take action towards it. And what you just did, like this whole process of calling out what clarity means to you, what it feels like not to have clarity, and just building awareness around what you want to gain clarity on, that is a huge first step. Like most people don't even do that for themselves. And that's why that's why you see a lot of inaction in the world when people have certain goals for themselves. They just sit in their confusion. They sit in their lack of clarity. And when you do that, there's no way you can take action. There's no way you can be motivated. There's no way you can actually achieve success because you are literally stuck. You're stuck in indecisiveness. You're stuck in confusion. And that just all leads to a lack of confidence and a lack of action. So we're going to tackle the meaning behind what we want to actually create, and then what steps we need to actually take to get there. Any questions so far? Anything popping up in your mind that you want to ask about or you want to call out? Okay.
I'm just noticing there's like a lot of people are, mentioning career. And it makes sense, just like with everything going on in the world. So much change is happening. So it's a really uncertain time.
Yeah, thank you. I had the chat on the other window, so I'm looking at it right now. So keep in mind this idea of a career path and what's next and what you might want to do and what that future career might look like. Because right now, I want to ask everybody to think about their why. Your why is the meaning behind what you actually want to work towards and accomplish, where you think you don't have clarity. And you might have heard, maybe watch Simon Sinek's like Start With Why, very popular TED Talk. If you haven't, look it up. You probably have heard the idea of values a lot, or passion or purpose, if you've read any sort of article on personal and professional development. And there's a reason for that. Your why is a source of endless motivation. Your why is separate from daily tasks. It's separate from environmental, global events. It is separate from a breakup, a loss of a job. It is what you set your path for, what you set your own, it's what you invest your energy in on a day-to-day basis. What I think is so powerful about your why is if you go into, let's say, a networking event, or you have a media platform and you're speaking about what you truly care about, and you're going to have critics. But if you fully believe in your why, then that criticism has a much less of an impact on you, because you're so sure of what you care about and why you care about it. And so I just want to spend the next 5 or 10 minutes working on this why, understanding what this why could be for us in the area that we feel that we don't have clarity. So get those writing utensils out. So think about where you don't have clarity. You're going to ask yourself and write down why this matters to you. So for example, if I don't have clarity in what I want to do with my life, I don't have clarity in what job I want next. Okay, so why does that matter to you? Well, it's important to have a job because I need to pay my way. I need to, pay my bills. I want to have work that I care about. Okay, but keep going with that. Get to the core of that. Why do you actually, why does this matter to you? Well, I don't want to waste my life. I want to, I feel like I can have a greater impact on the world in a lot of ways. Well, why does that matter to you? Well, because I felt like I made decisions in my life that didn't, that weren't really in alignment with what I truly care about, and I wasted time. And I don't want other people to do that. Well, why does that matter to you? Well, because I want to make a positive social impact in the world. I want everyone to feel like they can do the same as well. And keep going, keep asking yourself why. And you're going to find that there's a global why that probably relates to things outside of yourself, that might relate to a legacy, might relate to creating change or some injustice, and maybe not, or maybe it's just something as simple as I want to bring the community together, people together. And you're going to find that you also have a personal why this matters to you, because usually you can trace down the things that you truly care about to a specific moment in your life that you went through. And I know for a fact I host events to connect others because when I was younger, when I set my life to a specific purpose, I was socially awkward. I did not have a lot of friends. I felt awkward going into groups and saying hi to people even. And now to be able to be social and bring people together and to connect them and create an environment of acceptance to talk about things that truly, I think, matter to individuals is really important to me. That matters to me and that drives me. And once you figure out your why, let's also pick maybe 2 different ways to remind yourself of it. Is it a Post-it note on your computer monitor? I have 3. Is it a whiteboard in your living room? Is it an alarm on your phone? How can you remind yourself on a daily basis of why you're doing what you want to do? Why you're focused on this area that you don't have clarity in? And I'm going to give you a few more minutes. Just work on this, write it out. And if you have any questions, type it in the chat box. You can also private message me if you don't want to share it with everybody. Your why is directly related to this idea of passions, to purpose. Your why is directly related to meaning. And a lot of times when we don't have clarity, we become disconnected to why something matters. Right now, a lot of the reasons why I think we're seeing a lot of procrastination and a little bit lack of productivity is because we have so many inputs coming in. We have the world is in flux and changing, and we're spending probably more time scrolling on social media, more time watching the news, more time reading articles about things that don't actually relate to the areas that we don't have clarity in. And so if you're not intentionally focused on why something matters to you, it makes sense that we wouldn't have clarity in it. But if we can get to the heart behind what we truly care about, then we can find our motivation. If anyone is done with this exercise, before we move on, would you like to share? I know it's personal, so if you don't want to share, that's fine.
Yeah, I can share a little bit. It's kind of hard because I'm not used to sharing, but I think my why are my kids. They are my motivation. They are the one thing that I have clarity on, and they are the reason that I'm doing this career change and sort of challenge, in my situations with the little tools or the little support system that I have. So yeah, my kids, I would say.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's pretty easy to remind yourself that you have them, I bet. Right?
Yeah, because they're pretty loud.
I have to say I don't have kids, but I can imagine that sometimes when you get in the weeds of anything, especially with kids, when they're taking over your day, when you're so worried about everything from feeding them to school, that you might forget that you actually do really care about them in a way, for them to fuel your goals and for your missions and for the things that you're doing.
Yes, especially when they don't understand, or they mention things like, "But you're just sitting there at the computer. I don't see you doing anything." It's kind of hard to keep going, but yeah, I think that they truly understand. They just try to give you a hard time every now and then. But yeah, they're still, I think, remind you of everything that is possible and why it's possible, because they have a huge imagination and they're not afraid. So I think they're contagious in that sense of you shouldn't be afraid to go for your goals.
And I like that you pointed out too that it's, they're a constant source of motivation despite their reaction to you or how they treat you. And I think that's really important, that for any of our whys, that they're meaningful because they exist. They're meaningful because they're a part of us, not because they give us something, not because of how they treat us. I think very often, so I have a couple parents that are clients, and their levels of confidence when we first started working together were completely, related to their kids' reactions to them on a daily basis. But you don't control their reaction. You don't control how they perceive the world around you, but you can connect with the fact that they just exist, and that you care about the fact that they just exist, not in how they treat you. And so when we're thinking about our why and we're looking for a source of endless motivation, it needs to be disconnected from actual results. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Okay, are we ready to move on? If you need to work on this more later, then just kind of put a little pin in it. I also suggest getting a buddy later tonight and going over this and just talking about your why. And as you talk, as you speak something out loud, you'll come up with new conclusions and new ideas. Person doesn't even have to know you. Just stop a stranger on the street 6 feet away and say, "Hey, can I talk to you a little bit about my why?" Okay, so next we have our why, our source of motivation. We can use that to then create an action plan. And this is something as simple as a to-do list. Now, our goals, the goals that we have for ourselves, are just a form of a to-do. It's literally what they are. They may seem more lofty than that. They may seem more important than that. But literally everything in our life that we decide to care about, that is a goal, can be just minimized down to just a basic to-do. Because you'll find, especially if you've experienced success and you kind of look back on that success and the memories that you've had, that success comes from just consistently doing a task. It comes from maybe you're trying 100 things and it comes from like 5 of those things. And so the point now is to create a to-do list that relates to where we want to create clarity for ourselves, that relates to our why. So then we have motivation for it. So we have our why, and now what we want to focus on is the what, the how, and the when. So the really, really simple practice for this is to just start out with a goal, a to-do for the year, something that you want to accomplish that relates to where you feel you need clarity. So if it's a career, it could be an annual goal of find a position where I feel the work is meaningful, or it could be to get 3 sales on my own business, or it could be even before that, it could be, define what my business is and launch my business, or more lofty than that, it could be get acquired. So just get an overall goal. Let's just pick an annual goal. Now we want to work backwards. So we want to split that goal up into just monthly goals. One main thing that we need to do each month to say, okay, so I have this main goal at the end of the year. And what I want to do now is break this up into 12 smaller to-dos that, if I achieve these to-dos, will lead me towards this goal. And I promise you, no matter how lofty your goal is, it can be broken down into 12 steps. I even think 12 steps is a lot. But really, a lot of times we only need to figure out what's the one thing that needs to happen for me to make progress to get to the next step. And then what's the one thing I need to actually do to get me to the next step as well. And keep breaking this annual goal down. So once you have those 12 goals, those monthly goals, break it down for this month into weekly goals. So what are 4 things I need to do this month to get to the goal I have for the end of this month? And then if you'd like, what's one thing I need to do today to make progress to tomorrow, to make progress to the next day, to get me to that weekly goal? We're really just focusing on one thing. You've probably heard this before, that 80% of your results will literally come from 20% of your efforts. So it's okay to pick just one thing. And very often when it comes to a lack of clarity, it's because we don't know what the one thing is. And we get so lost in trying to figure out that one thing. Like, let's just even take like coaching, for example. You can get lost in trying to learn about webinars, Facebook ads, I can keep going, Instagram ads, LinkedIn posts, Facebook groups. It's virtual events, in-person events. So it's like all of a sudden now I'm trying to be an expert in 10 different things, 12 different things, when all I really need to do is pick one, create some goals related to it, remember why it matters to me, and start working on it. And it doesn't mean that these goals won't change. But they're a way for you to actually have clarity, which then will create motivation, which will allow you to take action. And that action will allow you to then have feedback, which then will allow you to actually grow, make progress, and to reevaluate and change things when you need to change them. But if we're not actually doing anything, then we can't figure out what works and what doesn't work. If you want to take this activity a step further, think about, with your one goal that you have, the one to do that you have for the day or for the week or for the month, what's something that can prevent that from happening? That's within your control. And so anytime we add something to our plate, especially when we're trying to create clarity for ourselves, we really do need to take something away. We need to give ourselves more space. I mentioned in the beginning of this workshop that clarity is practically impossible when we don't feel safe, when we feel overwhelmed, when we're too focused on everything that's going on around us. So we need to take things off our plate if we're going to put things on it. And every single day when you wake up, if you look at the one goal you have to do and you connect with why that matters to you, the passion that you have, you will probably take action on that one thing, because it's just one thing. And then not only will you make progress, but you'll feel good about yourself, because you've connected with your why. You understand why it's meaningful. Now you've made actual progress. So you're getting that natural hit of dopamine in yourself, and you can see that progress, and you have clarity on where that progress is taking you. So now all of a sudden there's this huge shift from what used to be a lack of clarity and stress and anxiety. And now you're focused on what's next. What can I do next? I know where I'm going. And if that to-do doesn't work, you know the exact process you need to do to create a new to-do for yourself. And you have the motivation again to do it because you're constantly reminding yourself and connecting to why it matters. So I know that's a lot, and I'll give you guys a few minutes to continue working on this. But would anyone like to share maybe just one of their to-dos that may have come to light from just this short activity?
I think just, I don't know, making actionable steps. Because I think and I know someone else mentioned it in the chat, it's just been a bit overwhelming. Like during this time, everyone's trying to better themselves, but then it's also just, there's a lot happening. And I think it's just at least for me, I feel like it's easy to get overwhelmed. So, and then it just kind of ruminates in my head. So I think for me, this is helpful to kind of just like write it out.
And not having clarity can feel overwhelming to the point where we don't even just sit down and write it out. And we don't just say, oh yeah, I know where I'm going. And it's like that reminder. And you could even be on the right path. You could even know what your why is and understand your passion and be motivated. But all of a sudden you wake up one day and you feel cluttered. And that leads to procrastination. It leads to having less patience with your relationships. It leads you to not wanting to hang out with friends because you feel like you're not truly sure what's going on in your life anymore. When in actuality, your life is great, but you just haven't reminded yourself of that. You haven't even told yourself that you're taking the right steps and that things take time. And I think when the world that's so focused on success and accomplishments, and that's all you're doing right now, it's important to stop and remind ourselves, okay, I'm good. I got a plan. I'm good. I can go have that, I can go out to dinner with my friends tonight, or I can have this 30-minute phone call with one of my relatives. It's okay. I'm not in that much of a rush. Would anyone else like to share before we move on?
I don't know if other people are the kind of this way, but I find I don't rest. And that just makes everything worse. And then I don't have enough time to rest, and I keep telling myself that I shouldn't. So I mean, that's something I've been kind of in this mode where I was like, all right, I'm locked indoors for 2-3 months. What I'm going to do, and I created this big list of things I want to do, and then by about a month in, I was burnt out.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to rest at home, and so that's something I've kind of been focusing on. What do I cut in terms of allowing myself to rest, not make room to do something else.
Mm-hmm. And you could take some time, and thank you for sharing, by the way. You could take some time and look at the to-dos that you have for yourself and ask yourself again, what is important about this? How does it relate to what I truly care about and what I feel is meaningful? How does it fit into my overall plan? And depending on your answers to those questions, you may find things that you can cut out. Or you could say, how impactful is this activity on my overall progress? Can I get a greater ROI in a different area? And we've talked about, preventing, getting in front of things that could prevent you from actually accomplishing these to-dos. Well, exhaustion is for sure one of those. So how do you build in self-care? How do you build in rest? On my to-do list for today, I literally have take a break, go for a walk, practice the keyboard. It's so important. And often, especially in this virtual world where we're working remotely, we are our own boss. We put more pressure on ourselves, and we forget that we are human, that we are more than just our to-do lists. And sometimes that means we actually, and this is counterintuitive, but make to-do lists for our self-care, for our friends, and hold ourselves accountable to that. So thank you all for sharing. Thank you for doing this with me. Just a couple more things. I kind of mentioned this lightly before, but so feeling stuck or lacking clarity in your life usually comes from a place of what you want from the world. It comes from almost a victim mentality, and it's your ego may be reacting to that, but it tends to be true. When we feel that we're stuck, we tend to blame everything else going on around us for being stuck. This especially occurs when something in our life that we think is going to work out doesn't work out, because we're so attached to that plan, to that to-do, to that goal, that we tend to lose sight of why we were doing that in the first place, what we were passionate about, what we truly cared about. And when we understand our values and what we're working towards, like the impact we want to have in the world or for ourselves, then the to-dos just become a way for us to enjoy that. And I think, so we're getting kind of into the definition of success for a moment, but too often our levels of confidence in ourselves and our happiness, our levels of contentment with our life and fulfillment come from what we accomplish, what we achieve. And so we strive to achieve something. We strive to accomplish a goal, and we accomplish it. Okay, great, but now what? And we realize that the enjoyment of actually working towards that goal, and you've heard this probably before too, that it's not the destination, right? It's the journey. It is so true and important that it's what you feel is meaningful. It's your why, it's the passion behind that actually drives you and motivates you and keeps you going and gives you that level of happiness. So when something doesn't work out, you just get to try a new thing that relates to what you care about. If anything, it's just kind of a gift. It allows you to be a little bit more creative. Let's try to keep that in mind when we're trying to find clarity for ourselves. And so I've also developed the 3 C's of self-leadership. I've given corporate workshops on this. I host my own workshops on this, and I incorporate it with all my coaching clients. But clarity is the first C of self-leadership. If you don't have clarity, you can't lead yourself. You can't take action. And the 2 other C's we've hinted at, because you can't talk about clarity without talking about them. They're confidence, because clarity develops confidence, but there's other things that we can do to develop confidence within ourselves. And there's control. It's prioritization. It's understanding the relationships around ourselves. It's having emotional management and awareness and relationship awareness and management. And so clarity will tend to increase your levels of confidence, but then you can take action to do that for yourself as well. And it will tend to help you prioritize things. But if we have an environment around ourselves that doesn't support our goals, that doesn't also support our clarity. And so who in your life too can we maybe invest more in? Who in our life do maybe we have to distance ourselves from, to ensure that we have sustainable clarity in our life and sustainable progress. So we're creating a lifestyle that fully supports us. So I'd like to challenge all of you, what can you do in the next 2 weeks to get more information about where you feel stuck, to build a little bit more confidence, to help gain you a little bit more clarity. So give yourself a little bit of a homework assignment. If it's about your career, read an article on career. There's Mark Mason, I believe, has some incredible articles about meaning and purpose in life and career and work. And there's a podcast called Work Well. Also highly recommend that. Or attend my workshop tomorrow on career clarity. But just give yourself a homework assignment on what you can do in the next 2 weeks to get more information. I promise you that will also add to you having greater clarity. Okay, everyone. So how do we feel? I know Alex was very vocal in the beginning about something he wanted to work on. I'd love to kind of check in. How are we feeling now?
Yeah, I think I got a little clearer on where I need to go. So yeah, I mean, I was trying to focus on one thing, and I think I need to take a different route altogether, maybe, and focus on how to be a better resource to the people that I'm trying to serve, instead of trying to become really educated on their specific thing. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, and that in itself is progress towards clarity. And
yeah.
And if it's what do I want to serve, well, it's what does who I want to serve want? I think that's an interesting question to ask.
Yeah,
And I think really important. And so maybe your homework is going to ask them.
that's a good idea.
Thank you for sharing. And there's only so much we can do in like 45 minutes. So I understand this is a work in progress. Any questions? Anyone want to share how they're feeling?
Ben, where can people learn about the career workshop tomorrow?
Yeah, so let's see. I'll put the link in the chat box. Let's see. As I find the chat box, I'll put it in the chat box.
Awesome. Yeah.
Does anyone else want to share or have any other questions?
Oh, perfect.
Something that other people have told me, and yours just kind of the last question of how can I inform where I get stuck? I think for me, the idea of journaling is something I've avoided for a long time, or just kind of keeping notes on myself, how I feel on a given day. And I think that's an exercise I think I need to start up so that I can identify a pattern or sort of here's where I'm getting stuck and use that as a framework.
I love that. And I mean, I know for myself, I'll start journaling or I'll start a spreadsheet and all of a sudden I'll hold myself accountable. So it's very important to make sure that this is like a non-negotiable. And like, okay, for a week, we can do anything for years. If we really, like, if we look back on our past experiences, we're like, okay, I did that job for that long. Why'd I do that? Because I understood the meaning behind it. So can we get in touch and hold ourselves accountable and make it non-negotiable to build that level of awareness for ourselves and for our life? And I mean, if you're in any area of your life, you're feeling stuck and you want to gain more clarity, keeping a journal can be really helpful. What work tasks drain you? What people drain you? What times of day are you feeling stuck compared to other days, certain days of the week? You can find out a ton if you have a little bit more data. So thank you for sharing that, Scott. Well, if we have no other questions, I'd love to first thank everybody for being here. And if you want to win some prizes, I'm giving out a couple of my workbooks that are kind of like they're a 6-month planner basically for personal and professional alignment. You can go to that link. I'm also giving out a free coaching session as well, and I'll put that link in the chat box. And yes, I have more, and I'll chat with you afterwards about that. Also, if you want to connect with me again, please reach out to me. Please send me a message on LinkedIn, send me a message on Instagram. I'm pretty active on both of those platforms. If you want to watch some videos, some free content, go to YouTube. I have a channel up there that I'm investing more time in. And if you want to learn more about coaching, just go to liveforyourselfconsulting.com/coaching. Ton of info out there. And if anyone on this, I see some chats going back and forth. If anyone that you connect with, again, reach out. Right? Our lives are made better through connection, through shared experiences. And if we're trying to grow for ourselves, if we're trying to gain greater clarity, sometimes we don't feel comfortable bringing those topics up with our friends or with our family or with people that are closest to us. So why not find some other people that might be able to be of support? Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was amazing. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you're feeling more motivated. I am. Yeah, this is perfect. And as Ben said, feel free to reach out to him if you have any questions. And we will let you know in our community when our next chat is. It'll be in July. So there won't be one for a couple weeks, and then we'll be back. So
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's the highlight of my day. I love seeing all your faces.
Aw.